Hello. Hello, beautiful people. Hello, Ssanyu Birigwa. Ssanyu Birigwa. It's a beautiful, beautiful song to sing your name.
Oh, thank you.
Ssanyu Birigwa is a narrative medicine clinician and indigenous bone healer and adjunct professor for the Master of Science Narrative Medicine program at Columbia University, and also the creator of the Pause 3 method. And really delighted. We just were chatting before hitting record here, and I'm just really delighted to share this space with you and this time with you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for the invitation. Being able to be of service, in various ways is part of what gets me going. And I find that, the work that you have been doing and that others that I've been on their podcasts are doing, that's what gets me going. So thank you for providing that opportunity.
Hmm, beautiful. So, as you know, this podcast is called Conscious Conversion. And the reason I have called it that is because of the play on words on the word conversion, which can talk about a sale or a conversion in terms of like digital marketing or marketing in general. But I want to start talking more about other ways that we can use that word conversion. I think sometimes people associate it with like a, gosh, the Roman Catholic conversion, trials and tribulations and wars, and that it doesn't need to mean that. For me, I feel like conversion means transformation. It's a
Mhm.
transformation where we convert from one form of being to another form of being. And I would love to open this conversation with you by asking about a conversion experience that you have had in your life that you would like to share with us.
So that conversion speaks to me in a way that I can articulate it in the body as a feeling of a current. So that conversion is an embodied experience first before I believe and have witnessed it to be something that manifests into life itself. And so this conversion that you speak of, there's a embodied feeling of a current, right? There's this currency and current of energy. And so that energy current creates the currency that allows me to convert or make the conversion into something else, right? And so part of that something else could be what we are envisioning our lives to be, different from what we are experiencing at the present moment. And yes, I've had these moments, many stories, where that embodied feeling allowed me, or not even allowed me, forced me, honestly, before I really got into a discipline of being in a energy space that's not so hard, right? That where the universe's gifts and or teachings are not so hard, felt so hard. I like to say I'd rather be touched upon the shoulder and prompted, hey, listen to this, as opposed to like a big push. And that's much of how I felt my 20s and 30s to be, is like these big pushes into like, do this, do that, you must change this way, do this. And that didn't feel good. And so I got into a different mindset. And a lot of that mindset, which allows us to feel the embodied difference and change that we're looking for, required a really deep investigation and a curiosity of the things that were holding me back, and being honest about those things that were holding me back. And so often it's fear, and that was a big one for me, and anxiety, that was another thing for me. And also thinking of the future before it's even happened, that's a big thing for me. And so all of that falls into a bucket of fear. And so I remember having um, woken up paralyzed from my fingers to my shoulder, and really having to dig deep into why my body was shutting down. And I took steps to really get into a spiritual understanding of the experiences I've had and what I was wanting to go towards and what I was feeling at the present moment to really understand what this paralysis was. And so I had to go through many steps. Some of those steps were done alone. Oftentimes, I found myself thankfully supported um, by a teacher who is now since passed and who really worked within the confines of spirit and energy and love to help me understand you can be healed. And that's a big piece of the conversion. We can be healed to be able to convert, to change, to switch into those dynamics that will get us to the place that we want to be truly, which is to live our most authentic life. And so that story of being healed is for a different day, but that experience of healing from within the heart was the deepest of clarity and also medicine that gifted me the ability to see I am the current to change. There's nothing outside of me that I need to go towards or seek. It's in me when I get into my heart. And that time that I woke up paralyzed, I was in a lot of transitions. I was starting a business. I moved to New York City. Some of my relationships weren't, the best. And so this is about 11 and a half years ago where I had to get real clear as to what I wanted. I had to get clear as to where I wanted to see myself in 5 years, 10 years. Once I got there, I was starting to build a new reality. And that had to come again from within my heart, I had to feel it in my body. So part of that allowed me to then enter into conversations, to ask for help, to seek out mentorship, and also get deeper into my own Indigenous healing and that connection to my ancestors and the connection to having had the intersectionality of growing up between East Africa and a town right outside of Boston, Massachusetts, that's very white, very segregated, and elitist. How do I now maneuver as an adult those two realities that created the way that I see my own energetic current being out into the world? How can I look at those two experiences and find power and medicine to be able to change my reality?
That sounds like alchemy.
Exactly.
I before I even knew what alchemy was, I thought of myself as a bridger of opposites in a lot of ways, and obviously not in the same ways that you are, but that East Africa, Boston, outside of Boston, elite white geographical sort of disparity and paradox is something that gives you something so rich to work with and to alchemize. And I mean, I'm sure it's challenging. It has been challenging, but what a gift these things like that paralysis, God, I can only imagine how scary that was, yet what a gift, because it gives you something, it gives you a reason to go within. And that reminds me, I really would love to hear more about what does it really mean to be a bone healer?
So my lineage is over 200 years old. I'll tell you a story to describe the bone healer. My ancestors came from the house of Chekwe, and Chekwe is the house that the villagers would travel to and want to sit with those who were occupying the house to ask for guidance. usually guidance from the dreams that they were having, maybe even guidance because someone was ill. And so through their coming to our house, my ancestors were the bridge. And it's funny that you use that word bridge, because I use the word bridge quite often as well. The bridge to story and spirit and ancestors and healing. And so from this house of stories, that we're all connected. The stories really taught us that we're all connected to source, to the nature around us, to God. And our teachings were often sought after from those who were in the village who might have been ill or sick, particularly those who broke bones. My ancestors were brought in as the medicine men and women, the doctors, the shamans in the palace. If the king, would beat a servant or so, our people would go and help them heal their bones. So it's an intersectionality of literally healing the bones itself, and then also to healing the heart, right? Being able to really connect to spirit through the heart, to be able to hear and listen what your guides are asking you to do. And so I, as a young person, started to really connect to story, to really connect to my healing hands. I didn't have language back then. So I got curious and started doing research on, metaphysics. As a child, my mother really brought my sisters and I up through that lens of metaphysical healing and understanding of the body. And that just only furthered my curiosity of how we could be self-healers. And so let's fast forward 20 years. My father has given me a book on our ancestors, and a lot of it I cannot read. It's in our tongue, Luganda. And so I would ask questions. And so this time that I shared with you when I woke up paralyzed, I also spoke to my father. We call father in Luganda Tata. So I called my Tata and I told him what was happening. And he says, well, we are the bone healers. This is somewhat of a rite of passage. And now I can talk to you about what this means. And I said, what do you mean? And I'm, of course, paraphrasing as well. In this situation, I was shocked because he was essentially saying that he was the teacher. And that saying here in the United States of when the student is ready, the teacher, will appear. In fact, maybe that's not a Western saying. That's probably more of a indigenous saying. That's what happened. And it was miraculous because all these years, all my life, the teacher had been there. And him as teacher is more of the guide to tell me more and more about my ancestral understanding and history and medicine. It's a medicine that I've been able to carry through my life to help self-heal, and also to be able to share with others how to really learn what lives in the body, what stories live in the bones, and how can we excavate those stories from the body and use them as tools of healing. So the bone healer for me is not only about healing bones. I've helped individuals accelerate healing, and also used ways to help one another be curious about their own stories, right? All of the good and bad and everything, the trauma, these experiences live in the body. And so the more and more we get a clearer understanding of where in the body those stories live, we can start to excavate those stories and start to see, okay, let's work on, let's say your right knee is hurting. Yes, fine, you knocked it, but we can work on the pain. But what's in that right knee that's making things of dis-ease in the body? And oftentimes we can start to excavate that and really work on what one might call the shadow, shadow work, really deep excavation of these stories. So the bone healer itself is not only one who can connect to spirit in a way to articulate messages, and also heal the actual bone. So that has been the story of the bone healer in my experience. And I find that every day there's always something new that we start to find connection with that amplifies our toolbox.
Talk about depth, you know? I mean, you're saying like to sort of travel to the deepest part of ourselves, you know, and the bones being both a literal sort of place in the body, the deepest parts of our body, and this metaphor of doing this deep shadow work has gotten such a has become such a buzzword now, but like
Mm.
but really this like deep work in the parts of ourselves that we can't yet see, and inhabiting those parts of ourselves on a deep cellular bone level.
Yes. Well,
With
because
support.
with support, because
Yeah.
we all express a double consciousness. And so, Frank Fanon will speak about this double consciousness in a way of race and that disconnect to ourselves. And this too, this work, this inner excavation, this curiosity that we are having with wanting to dive deep into, the unknown depths of our consciousness, is all about un. It's funny. I was going to use unleashing because it's almost like we are unleashing a different consciousness from our being. I pause there because but unleashing is the word.
Yeah.
Um,
Liberating.
Liberating, there's a level of exposure um, that we don't allow ourselves to experience. And that level of exposure of ourselves, our true identity, right? Um, as a narrative medicine practitioner, we have a principle. One of the principles is around the self and other. So, in order for us to understand the other, we have to understand the self. And so there is an I, a selfishness, in this culture, we see selfishness as a negative point of view, a negative, way of being. But we must come into the selfishness. That's the I, that's getting to know ourselves first before we can create a connection with the other, which I call the we. And so I find it very fascinating that this country stands, or we would like to believe that we stand on this pillar of we are the people. But are we, if we can't allow space and time to to investigate who we are in the I, so we can actually authentically say we are the people? So I think that really runs true to all of this, work that we're actually, I don't use the word work, all of this investigation that we are allowing ourselves to do on ourselves. Because my core of what I know I'm here to do is to create healthier communities. And that's through that understanding of healing is multidimensional. It requires a really rooted, embodied approach that is integrated with all of our experiences that we've had, experiences of our parents. Those things attribute to who we are today. When we get down into like the cellular understanding of who we are, that's our DNA. And so there is ancestral work we have to go through, epigenetics. There's all of these little pieces of the puzzle of who we are and who we want to be that we often don't allow ourselves to expose ourselves to.
Mm. So, how do you think we, as individuals, as part of a collective, can take this evolutionary leap that we need, that we must take right now into a new paradigm, into a new way of being?
The heart
Mm.
and the head. We allow these two spaces to open up, to free themselves from the fear, from trauma, from the old stories we've been telling ourselves that we can't do this, we were unable to do this because of this and that. If we allow ourselves to open that heart and open our minds to shift, to, you know, we can use the word mindset or whatever might resonate. We allow those two things to open, we can go anywhere. We can do anything and everything. You know, we must grasp onto that reality, that knowing we can do anything.
Is we live in a world of infinite possibility.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we, if we can open up our hearts and our minds to that reality of infinite possibility and of multidimensionality, where we do exist in all places at once in one way or another as a collective unified consciousness. That's what I hear when you're talking about sort of this going so deep on the cellular level and going and also sort of expanding from there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I say if you can dream, and even if you would say to me, but Ssanyu, I don't remember my dreams, it doesn't matter. If you can dream, that's the first step of shifting your reality. Because then the next step is that the heart is open now for you to feel into what that could possibly feel like to be in a new reality. So that's the second step. You've embodied it because it's now your heart. So then the third step is really access, putting yourself out there, creating opportunity, asking for help. Oftentimes, we don't ask for help. So you spoke of alchemy. Yeah, there's recipes to this. There's literally recipes to this.
Yeah.
And if you stay steadfast, diligent, and disciplined, I mean, I just get excited for all of that. I'm like, okay, so what's next? And
Right.
often too, those moments of discouraging, you know, feelings, those are great moments too, because we can alchemize that into, I call it the fire, but that fire is also going to heat up that water that's in us, right? We're 95, 97% water. We heat that water up in our bodies, and that's go. And that water can then become that connection to air and to the way that we are moving through time and space in such rapid speed now, that if we can harness our own embodied feelings, we can essentially create the speed that we are most comfortable in. And when the universe is like, "No, you're getting too comfortable," it's going to heat your water up even more, and it's going to ask for a different speed.
Yeah, and that reminds me of what you said early in this discussion, which is sort of like as you get older and wiser, it's what I hear is like gentler lessons.
Yes.
I don't need to be slapped in the face or knocked on my ass anymore.
No, thank you.
I promise I'm listening, and I
Yes.
promise I will receive gentle lessons and
Yes.
shift gears as
Yes.
needed.
Yes, yes. Because also, doesn't that play with that mindset and the word hustle? I'm sorry, I'm not interested in hustle.
No.
And that generation that I come from, that we come from of hustle, I'm good. Y'all can be there if you want. Not interested. Because from there is the conversion into a new currency and an up leveling and an expansive experience of life that I want to share and share with others and build with others.
When we're hustling, we can't create, because we're
No,
so in this like scarce time, scarce money, scarce that there's not that expansive place of depth of
there's no
creation, which
room.
is, yeah, there's no room for that. How can people or I guess so you shared sort of where we need to go as individuals in a collective to start to make that evolutionary leap into a new paradigm. And I'm wondering, like, what's one step, practical, logistical, pragmatic step that they can take um, today in order to get there?
take 5 minutes a day to set your intention, to visualize yourself being in action of that intention. Use your imagination, get as wild as you possibly can. Breathe that moment into your body. Visualize that feeling and that moment traveling directly into your heart. Maybe even touch your heart. Feel your heartbeat. Start your day.
Mm. Thank you. I love that. And it's such a simple thing, and yet it's so powerful if you actually start there. And that 5 minutes might be 5 minutes for a couple weeks, but that 5 minutes will turn to 10 minutes, will turn to 20 minutes, will turn to, like, I
Yes.
need an hour and a half, y'all, of alone
Yes.
time so that I can
Yes.
so that I can
Yes.
do some magic, please.
Yes, yes. And that's when it gets juicy, right? When you're
Yeah.
like, oh, yes, those moments are very important to me.
Yeah.
Um, that's what starts my day.
Yeah.
And when I don't do that, I know the difference. I can tell the difference. I feel the difference, and I'll just stop.
Yeah.
Because you can set intentions all throughout the day. But if there's one thing you can do, that's it. And then I'm just going to add another thing. Let's take the excuses away. The, the beautiful thing about excuses, they're all valid. It's something has happened. It really has. But what I've been learning is, and observing in others as well, is when we acknowledge that there's something that prevented us to do XYZ at the time that we anticipated, or maybe taking the joy away from even doing XYZ. Take that moment and set your intention of truly what is it that you want, and set yourself free. Do it. Do it. Just go ahead, do it. You're running late, still show up. Do it. You missed the deadline, still do it. Send
Mm-hmm.
it. You never know. There might
Mm.
be, and probably will be, that one person who says, you know what? Oh my goodness, like, you're in. That's what I mean about, we often don't expose ourselves to what exactly we want
Mm.
because we're the obstacle.
So I know you've got all sorts of beautiful offerings, and I'm curious if people are, like, hearing you and wanting to take that next step with some support, how
Yes.
can they find you? How can they work with you?
I am at Ssanyu at letgoletlove.com. That's my email. And my website is letgoandletlove.com. I have group offerings, as well as I do one-on-one mentoring and guidance, and also ways in which that I teach individuals how to use their own healing hands, how to use their own story for medicine, through different retreats that I do to Mama Africa. And our next retreat will be in spring of 2023.
Beautiful. I will include all of those links in our show notes in a variety of locations, so people can easily find you.
Thank you.
And Sanyu, I am so grateful for your presence on this planet and on this show.
Thank you, Sarah.
This
My
is
pleasure. This is fun.
such a
Always
beautiful
good.
conversation.
Yes.
Thank you. All right. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you. You too.